Hey everybody, buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
That means how's it going? Or something like that.
Close.
Close.
Or should I say, cerca.
Welcome to our Wednesday
Yes.
bilingual.
I was going to say that's as far as the bilingual
That's as far.
aspect
The
is going
rest
to go.
of it is all in English because not going so well.
No.
But I hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully your day is going better than this is starting.
Yes.
But we're excited to bring the Word of God to you today for our Wednesday night
Yes.
video.
Ooh, that was
I know,
that was,
it's
that was a
kinda
close one right there.
Woo, everything's
the house is
falling-
coming
I
down.
know, everything's falling apart here. We're doing good. We're going forward.
Going forward, in spite of whatever you see on screen, we are moving forward, definitely. Well, hey, folks, we are in, believe it or not, dun dun dun, Ephesians chapter 5.
Come on.
I know, right? Wasn't it crazy, right? And we've been talking about relationships, and we've been spending time, good time, on the marriage relationship, which is very, very key. And so definitely want to keep moving forward in this because we uncovered some big things last week. And I don't know if you watched the video or a previous video, but my goodness, like we were talking about how, what is the wife asked to give up in the marriage relationship? And ultimately we landed, through Paul's teaching, we landed on she's asked to give up control. And that's a tall order we talked about, and how that's actually, I think you landed on, these are empowering commands. These are tall orders. These are empowering commands. Think about this if you've ever worked with little kiddos and you give them a job to do and how it empowers them. And it's like they come alive in that moment. And I'm thinking about in my own classroom at school, how sometimes you'll have a kid who's, on the surface might seem like the naughty kid, right? And then you give them a job and put them in charge of something, and it's like, oh my goodness, it empowers them, and suddenly they wanna do
good.
well, and these commands. So the wife, submit, control. That's an empowering command, and then we landed on, well, what's the husband asked to give up? Selfishness, right? And that's meant to be an empowering command, and we'll get more into kind of later on the sacrificial component of what that looks like for husbands. And that's what I want us to remember. These are empowering commands. And I asked two big questions last week, right? I asked you wives, okay, to do some reflection on this. Would you treat Jesus the way that you're treating your husband? Tough question. And just realize, husbands, I'm going to ask you a tough question also. Husbands, would Jesus treat us the same way that you're treating your wife, right? Because that's what Paul's hitting at. He's trying to get us to frame everything through the relationship between Jesus and the church. If you want to know what your marriage is supposed to look like, look at Jesus and the church, and keep those things in full view. And so I
love how you've been really leaning into the context of this whole entire, that this whole marriage thing isn't plucked out of scripture, and you submit, well, you love. You know what? Jesus was the forerunner here, and he paid the price for us, and he gave us the example, and he's still interceding for us. So showing us how this is meant to be done, and I love how the greater context of this whole passage is about Jesus and the church and us and how we're doing relationships. But so it's so easy, not just with this, but with anything, to kind of pluck something out and be really an isolated thing. And I love how you keep pointing it back to there's a greater picture here.
Yeah, because I don't know if we're going to get to this today, but for sure what we're hoping to continue to land on is that Jesus is the model in this equation, and unity is the target. Jesus is the model, unity is the target. And so do my actions and thoughts and words reflect the model, Jesus.
There you go.
And unity is the target. Do my actions and my thoughts and my words point to the target? And that's what Paul is hitting at. He's wanting us to remember Jesus is the model, unity is the target. And so that's why he keeps bringing it back. You'll hear him say over and over again in the passage, as to Jesus, or as Jesus does, or as the church does,
Right.
he's going to continue to use that phrasing because Jesus is the model and unity is the target. And everything you do, say, or think has to line up with the model and point to the target. And if it's not, well, then there's a need for change. Okay. And I know that you'd love to see the other person change first. But I don't know if you know this or not. You don't have much control over somebody else, and sometimes we don't have much control over ourselves from time to time, right? And so you'd love to see the other person change first, but you can't guarantee that, and you can't control that. So then we're going to talk today. What do you do about that then, right? So we're going to spend some time today in self-reflection mode, believe it or not, which is easy to say if you're the teachers, right? Exactly. But honestly, we're doing self-reflection mode along with you. And so when you're watching this video or these videos and you're reading this passage, and again, we're in Ephesians chapter 5, we're taking a look at kind of the latter half of it. It's verses 21 through 33, and we really looked at verses 21 through 24 last week. But ask yourself this: who are you actually wanting to change more when you're reading this? If you're a husband or if you're a wife watching these videos or reading this passage, who are you wanting to change more? Okay, are you wanting yourself to change more? Or are you wanting your spouse to change more? And that's something that I need to ask myself when I read these passages. And when I watch these videos or any other videos on marriage or relationships or you name it, I need to ask myself, who am I wanting to change more? Is it me or somebody else? And if the answer in my heart of hearts is somebody else, there's a problem. There's a problem there because I can't control somebody else. And so at best, I can control me. And so I've got to, on a good day, yeah. But we do want to say this, okay? There's a legitimacy to wanting to see somebody else change.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know if you were going to continue that thought or not. I was pausing there for you in case you wanted to continue that thought.
No, I had been kind of mulling on this a little bit earlier, and I was just thinking about, because you were kind of talking about off camera, kind of talking about something we talk about all the time, I guess, when we are sitting in hearing a sermon or watching a video, or how many times have you said, and you kind of pointed this out, how many times have you said to yourself, oh, I wish so-and-so was here because they need to hear this, right?
I've said that and thought that.
We do that all the time. And sometimes even for great reasons. Oh, so-and-so would, like this would really help them. That's not what we're talking about. We're not identifying those times. We're identifying those times. Oh, so-and-so needs to hear. Kind of more in the, you're right. They probably do. We're not even discounting that. But if that's what we're taking away, you're shortchanging yourself of what you need to be hearing.
That's
and
good.
So I was
kind
of pondering that whole kind of thought, and was thinking about especially in husband and wife, but with all of our relationships. So often we're living our lives relationally, subconsciously asking and answering this question all the time. This relationship would be so much better if, and we're filling in those blanks. And so many times that blank gets filled in with someone else changing. This relationship would go from a 6 to a 9 if they only pick their underwear up off the floor. This relationship would go from a 3 to a 7 if my kids would just listen to me. We're always kind of filling in the blanks, and we may not even do it consciously, but subconsciously we're always kind of trying to think, well, if they would change, boy, things would be better. And there might even be truth to that. We're not for a second discounting that. Please hear us. What we're saying is you can't change that.
Exactly.
You can't control that. And so what happens is when I come up against, whether it's relationally or in life, something that is causing me pain or discomfort or uneasiness, here's a little story about me. I always want to picture myself in the when I'm watching the Indiana Jones, or
I can't even drink my water. I'm gonna laugh. I'm sorry.
Or the kind of the superhero movie, like more like the rugged adventurer, like like Indiana Jones. Yeah, I can't think of another one, but just kind of that.
Do you even own a leather jacket?
I don't.
How about a bullwhip?
Several.
Okay.
Not really, but I always want to picture myself as that guy. When in reality, there's always that one guy that's like trying to gather his papers and his glasses, and he needs his like water and the like his asthma thing, and right? You know where I'm going with this. I am that guy. That's me. I've always, and we're just talking about real. This is not spiritual stuff. This is just real life now. Like I'm always the guy, like for overnight stuff. You bring like a little bag like this, and you've got everything you need. I've got a whole bag for my tech stuff, and I've got a whole nother bag for like everything that I might need along the way. Because
your own bedding, your own pillow.
Yes, they make fun of me for bringing my own pillow all the time. So I have a high value for comfort, I guess, is what I'm saying.
You could say that.
I get really uncomfortable really easily. I remember that from even being a kid. I was always agitated. Something was either itchy or it was scratchy or it annoyed. I was one of those kids. Something was always bothering me. Yeah, my wife is going, what do you mean when you were a kid?
You're just highly tactile and
very tactile, very sensitive, yes. And so what happens is when we get, this is bothering me relationally, we want to do something to fix that.
Yes.
And it causes fear and anxiety to rise up in me. And so I need to mitigate that. I've got to do something with this fear and anxiety and this annoyance. And my immediate reaction is to try to control somebody to make that happen. And the downfall is relationships don't thrive when we're trying to control them. And the control really is only an illusion of control. So I might now start controlling you with my anger. I'm gonna unleash on you. I might control you with my victimness.
Ooh.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay, you do that. I guess I'll just be over here just being unloved like usual. Like we have these violin stories, and we're gonna And you know what?
Yes.
Those might be real feelings, but we use that to manipulate a situation to control the other person. And we're not really controlling them. We're getting something that looks like what we want, but it's not lasting. And so that's really a counterfeit. We become consumers of relational equity instead of givers. And so so we still have to solve this uncomfortableness. If I don't solve it by controlling someone, what do? I go to God with it. Instead of trying to get peace from my relationship, how about getting peace from the peace giver?
Yes.
Because when something's uneasy in here, I'm going to try to control something, or I'm going to submit to something. And so if I can go to Jesus, and he can calm my fears, and he can say, you know what? Even if that other person never changes, I got you. Even if you're never getting peace and joy from that relationship, you're getting peace and joy from the only source you're supposed to be getting peace and joy from. So when we're not drawing it from Jesus, we're going to try to draw it from someone else. And when I don't get it, I'm going to control it. When I control it, I kill it. And nothing good happens from that point on. That was my train of thought.
No, I know, exactly. I'm glad I paused, actually. No, I don't have anything to share. No, that was really good. I like that you said that because ultimately Jesus would tell us this in his parables. He'd say, you reap what you sow. Okay, whatsoever a man soweth, he also reaps, right? And so if we want peace, why do we sow strife? To reap peace. That doesn't work at all. Like the peacemakers sow in peace, James would write, and reap a harvest of righteousness, I think is what James says. But like you have to sow peace in order to reap peace.
If you're looking for entrance into a home, right?
Yes.
We've got a keypad in our house. It just went out, and so they sent us another one. So we just got that installed. So we used to punch the buttons and it wouldn't turn. I'm gonna get so frustrated. And so we got this new lock, and it's just a joy now. We punch the right buttons. Yep, and we gain access to the house. Now I can take a battering ram and smash the door in off its hinges. Both ways are getting in the house.
Yes.
And that's what this talking about bringing this. We want peace. So we use strife to get it. And you're right. You can use this bull in a china shop and whatever weird tool that we are just accustomed to using because of our humanity, and you can get something that looks like peace. You can get entry to the home, but it's not healthy. You busted your door. Like, there's destruction that's happening as we're gaining what it is. And so there's multiple ways to get that. The only healthy one is to get it from God.
And many times in these videos, we've quoted Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, and he'll say something like this. He'll say, you can't use unworthy means to achieve noble ends, or it just doesn't work. Yep. You got to use worthy means. Worthy means lead to noble ends.
Right.
And so if you're using strife to get peace, if you're using control to get your husband to love you more, if you're using lack of love husbands to try to get your wife to respect you more, that doesn't work. Right. How's that played out in your life so far? That's what we're and we're teasing that out in us too. In our own marriages also. And so just self-reflect with us today, right? Because what can you do about someone else's faults? Nothing. Nothing. Or when has pointing out the faults in somebody else ever led to your own personal growth?
Right.
Like that that only leads to stagnation. That's what
it's this Band-Aid on top of my anxiety.
Well, at least I'm not as bad as him.
Right,
At least our marriage is better than theirs.
And
like
if I can point out my spouse's fault or whatever, for a moment it puts that little Band-Aid over it. It does nothing for my growth.
Exactly. So the reason we say all this is because you don't want to read Ephesians 5, and you don't want to listen to Paul's teachings on someone else's behalf.
Exactly. Right.
Don't do this. Don't listen to these videos on someone else's behalf. Don't sit here, husbands, and say, oh, that's right. She is controlling. Lay it into her, guys, right? And wives, don't listen to us and say, that's right. He's selfish. Lay into him, boys, because you're gonna miss. It's gonna go over your heads, the true teaching, instead of going into your heart, what Paul is intending. It's gonna go over our heads, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, and we don't want you to do that. And so we're gonna talk today about influence then versus control. Influence versus control. And so I have a question for you, Kirk. How do you gain, and you already kind of hinted at this, all right? But that doesn't mean you have to shorten your answer by any means, okay? But how do I gain permission and authority then to speak into or influence someone else's life? Because I can't control Kirk, okay? As much as I would love to control you, I can't. What I can do, though, is I can try to influence you. But influence requires permission and authority. And so how do I gain permission and authority then? Because there's a legitimacy to me wanting if I'm watching this video as a wife, there's a legitimacy behind me wanting my husband to change.
Absolutely.
And husbands, there's a legitimacy behind you wanting to see your wife change. But you can't control her and you can't control him. So then
what are we left with?
What we're left with is influence. But how do I gain permission and authority?
That's a powerful question. I'd love to hear the answer.
You would love to hear the answer.
I immediately want to look back to Jesus. If anyone ever had a right to control someone else, we are his creation. If anyone ever had permission to step on toes, to overstep boundaries, with God there is no bound. We belong to him. Whether we're rebelling or not rebelling, we are. He made us, and so he could have the right to destroy us or do whatever he wants with us. And I watch the life of Jesus, and I watch how little he controlled people. I watch how he managed himself. We said it in an earlier video. He had nothing to prove. He was confident in who he was, and he didn't let people's misinterpretations of who he was or what he was doing affect his mission, affect his relationship with his Father. He kept connected to his Father, so he kept his own heart in the right place. So I feel like that's kind of the number one thing. We've already talked about it, but it's also my answer to that question. Is if I'm dysfunctional and needy and like kind of like a scared, like some of our relationships, I hope you laugh at this and then I hope you cry a little bit at this. Some of our relationships is like two scared cats sometimes. Right? We're just you know how we're just and I don't even mean always fighting. I don't even mean that always in a fighting sense. I mean it in a like there's always this uncertainty and the claws are always out and we need to be Labradors, right? We need to be you dumb dog and kick it. We're not saying be doormats, but what I'm saying is being confident that
and don't kick your dogs
and
either.
don't kick your dogs either. Being confident as Jesus was in who he was and that I don't need you to love me to be validated. I'm getting that from God. And then also,
that's good.
Jesus also, how do I want to say this? He didn't ignore truth about it, about a reality. And so sometimes that means having difficult conversations. Sometimes that means being real. Sometimes it means doing what the scriptural thing is, overlooking an offense. And sometimes it means see there's both sides in there. And it's having the wisdom to know when to do it. So ultimately I look at the third thing is, what did Jesus do? He went to the cross on my behalf. He laid down his life. And the Bible tells us that we love him because we're so amazing. No, that's not what it says at all.
What translation would that be?
It says that we love him because he first loved me. He sacrificed when I didn't deserve it. And husbands and wives, if we start laying down our lives for one another, guess what? Permission and authority is going to show up real quick.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because when I was thinking through this, right, you know, how do I gain permission and authority in order to influence somebody? Because I can't control them, right? Humility. Humility is the key, definitely. Solomon will write this. This is Proverbs 16, verse 23. A wise man's heart guides his mouth, and his lips promote instruction, or it makes his lips persuasive. You're going to sound persuasive. You're going to be persuasive. You're going to promote instruction when you do the hard work of guarding your heart through humility. Like that is what the key is. You've got to guard your heart through humility first, and then that's going to gain you access. It's going to give you the authority and the permission to influence, though, but not to control. And I had this thought this morning. I actually texted it to Kirk. My desire to influence needs to be much stronger than my desire to control, because there's a difference. Think about it with your own kiddos, right? Okay? Think about how different would it be if you just try to influence your children instead of to control them? And now back to the husbands and wives thing. Think of how much different your relationship would be. You use way different methods.
You do.
When you're trying to
result looks the same, but it's not the same.
But it's not the same. Definitely, yeah. Your means for influencing somebody are always going to be different than your methods for trying to control them. And you've gotta approach it from that, right? Hudson Taylor. Okay, he's an old Protestant missionary to China, late 1800s. Okay, and He said this, I'm going to quote him: "We must learn to move men through God by prayer alone." And what's interesting about Hudson Taylor is he was kind of this new wave evangelist, new wave missionary, where when he went to China, he didn't just try to change their culture. Okay? He tried to influence them. And so he first made a study of the Chinese culture. He immersed himself in the Chinese culture so that he could gain permission and authority, not as an evangelist to just go in and say, here's where you're wrong, here's where you're wrong, this is what you need to do different in your life, right? No, he went to their culture, immersed himself in their culture, and through his process of humility, and not just seeing himself as this smart British guy who knew the way, he went there with a humble heart, and he took on this mindset that I'm not... Think about it like this. Did Hudson Taylor in the late 1800s in China, do you suppose he met some opposition from the authority figures or from the Chinese people who he was trying to minister to, right? But he knew a key aspect to being a good missionary and a good evangelist and just a good person in general was I gained permission and authority not by telling you how you need to change. It's through me moving you through God, but by prayer alone. And so if you're a husband or a wife watching this and that you want to see your spouse change, okay, that's fine, okay? But make sure you want yourself to change more because you're the only person in the equation that you can actually control. And so that's why we wanted to spend some time in self-reflection today. And so I had two passages I wanted to land in today. So wives, okay? How can you influence your husbands, okay? We're going to go to 1 Peter, believe it or not. And we're going to go land in 1 Peter, and I wish I would have turned in my Bible before I started talking here. But
we'd like to take this station break right now.
Exactly. So listen to Peter, because he's going to sound like Paul, believe it or not. And I would argue both of them are sounding like the Holy Spirit. There's a connection here. So wives, how to influence your husbands. This is 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 1 and 2. Wives, in the same way, be submissive to your husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words, but by the behavior of their wives when they see the purity and the reverence of your life.
Wow.
That's how
powerful.
You can influence your husbands. Okay, wives, that's how you can influence them.
So what are the wives managing there? They're managing themselves.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
And God is managing the husbands.
And God is managing the husbands. And God's a way better manager of your husband, definitely. And so then husbands, if you're watching this and you're wanting to know, well, how do I influence my wife? Listen to, this is 1 John 4:18. There's no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear because fear has to do with punishment. And the one who fears is not made perfect in love. And so as husbands, my way of influencing my wife is through perfect sacrificial love. And we're going to talk more in our next week's video about the agape love and the role that it plays.
Probably not just a cookie cutter card at Valentine's Day once a year.
No.
Maybe like an everyday sacrificial.
It might be an everyday sacrificial kind of love. And so if you're looking for keys, okay, for how to see change, because you want to see change. You definitely want to see change in you, but I understand you want to see change in your spouse. Right. Let's take a look at how we can use influence instead. And so husbands, I'm going to leave you off with two big questions today, one for the husbands and one for the wives, for you guys to ponder. All right, husbands, I want you to ask yourself this, okay? So we know last week that the wives are asked to give up control, okay? So husbands, ask yourself, how has your selfishness contributed to her need or her desire to have control? How might your selfishness, what you're asked to actually give up, how might that actually be contributing to her issue with control, right?
So because I'm being selfish causes a reaction in her that she wants to control because I'm starting off with
exactly.
That's a great question.
Or think about it like this: how does your selfishness stir up fear in her?
Right.
Because
what it is.
Because that's what the control is linked to. It's linked to fear. So how's your selfishness? Now, wives, ask yourself this though: how has your desire for control contributed to your husband's selfishness? So what you've been asked to give up, how is that actually contributing to what you want him to give up? And again, think about it like this: how does control create fear? Because I'm going to hold on to selfishness out of fear, and I'm going to hold out of control out of fear. And so how is what I'm doing actually creating the problem and contributing to the problem?
Well, thank you, Pastor Stephen, for the nice, light, easy pondering questions today.
Exactly. We left you in safe mode. Oh, shoot. But we are out of time, as always, and we love you guys. We miss you, and thanks so much for tracking with us through this. God bless you guys.